And here we go, one more crazy word problem. So this one is going to produce a system that is nonlinear. So we are going to see something weird here. But it's actually kind of a normal setup. The perimeter of a rectangular rug is 40 feet. The area is 96 feet squared. Find the dimensions of the rug. Now you could actually kind of like number crunch your way to the answer, like just guess and check, but we can also do it as a system. Now the book did something a little annoying on this in its example. It was doing a TV instead, but it decided that the length of a TV was longer than the width of a TV. And I get that's how we stack TVs, but I have seen some people turn them on their side and use them as like a long thing, especially if you're going to put a waiting list on it. Like that's way easier to do in a big room. So I didn't like the book presuming that, but I'm telling you guys that. So when you're typing in your answer, put the longer number in for the length. Just assume the book is going to think that, i.e. Alex is going to think that. It's their way of getting down to one solution, even though technically there's more than one. All right, so we need some equations. So I have a rectangular rug. All right, so let's start with there we go, lovely rug. And the perimeter is the all the way around. I need some variables in here. Find the dimensions. The dimensions are the length and the width. All right, so I've got length, got width. Perimeter is add them all up. So 2 L's and 2 W's. They tell us is equal to 40 feet. Okay, poof, equation. Now our other piece of information, the area is 96 feet squared. All right, how do I find area? Well, I know how to find area, length times width. So now we have length times width is equal to 96. We have 2 equations and 2 unknowns. This is enough to solve and get a numeric answer. Might get more than one, but we can do it. Little ugly though. Okay, so the second equation looks more straightforward, but to solve for one of the variables, I have to divide by the other. And then I have a fraction with a variable on the bottom. I don't want to do it. So I'm going to play around with the first equation instead. And notice 2 L's, 2 W's is 40. Yep, everything's divisible by 2. So 1 length and 1 width has to add to 20. And there's only so many whole number pairs that would do that. And you could actually just sit here and like, oh, 10 and 10, that multiplies to 100, not 96. Next. 9 and 11, that's 99, still not 96. Next. 8 and 12, oh. Or we can solve it. So if L plus W is 20, I am going to solve for L, so I'm going to move that W. So the length is the same as 20 minus W. And I'm going to put that thing in place of the L. So this is now the thing that is the length times the width is 96, but that thing is the lovely 20 minus W. Now it is an equation only in terms of W. I can solve this. So we're going to distribute. So that's 20 W's now minus W squared is equal to 96. Now I could just move the 96, but then my W squared is negative. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to move this stuff to the right instead. So this is now a positive W squared, but a negative 20W and a positive 96. All right. So pairs a number that multiply to 96. And I literally just arrived at this answer by running through numbers that added to 20. It is indeed 8 times 12. to get them to add to a negative 20, I have to make both of them negative, which works out, because then when I set those equal to 0, I get a positive 8 and a positive 12. Two different widths. Now what? Now we take those back to one of the equations and see what the corresponding other number would be. All right, so if the width is 8, I'm going to take these back over here. So if W is 8, then L is 20 minus 8, which is 12. Oh, look, 12. This is what often happens. And if I plug in 12, I'm going to get 8. So we need to call one of these the length and one of these the width, but we are getting the pair of numbers 8 and 12. And remember what I said before, the book assumes lengths are longer. So for this, we're going to say the length is 12 and the width is 8. Those are the dimensions of the rug. I add those together, I get 20. I double that, I get the 40 for the perimeter. I multiply them, I get the 96 for the area, so it checks. Units, Liz, those are in feet. Okay, now, if when I plugged in 8 and 12, I didn't get the same pair, then I would have two different answers. And that can happen. Like you're going to see potentially somewhere it's like the sum of the squares of these numbers is blah. The sum of the difference of these numbers is blah. Find the pair of numbers. And you can actually have more than one pair. All right. So that is it. Have a happy Turkey Day. I will be sitting in my office hours on Tuesday from 12:30 to 7, possibly chopping vegetables for Thanksgiving or dinner, one of the two. Please come by. I'll be bored.